Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Opinions from the Armchair. This accent doesn't make you sound pretentious if you're actually British. In this episode, I review that iconic film of the late 90s, Titanic. Set against the background of the real-life Titanic, Titanic is the most Titanic of the Titanic movies. Ironically, this movie was considered the greatest of its kind for the same reasons the ship was. They were both the longest, cost the most money, had the latest in technology, and featured some of the biggest names of their time. This particular version is told through the fictional character of Rose, as she recounts her time aboard the Titanic, her arranged marriage with the equally fictional Cal Hockley. The debutante, however, meets the additionally fictional Jack Dawson, and despite the great division in class, nothing can come between them. Titanic went on to become one of the most critically acclaimed and greatest selling movies of all time. I think it sucks.
Say what?
I don't care if that's how you feel, I just don't like this movie. Now, if you saw my previous video about the actual Titanic, you'll know that I disapprove of humanity's lust for that sunken ship. Let me be clear, that is not the reason I dislike this film. And also, because I dislike it, I have not bought the DVD, and so I'm going to have to improvise for the actual footage. My first complaint is the completely unnecessary framing device that they chose to use. We start off with a group of people who have apparently told the world they are going on a historical expedition to the Titanic, but in reality they are a gang of plundering treasure hunters who are searching for a priceless sapphire necklace and are not even pretending to have any higher ideals than that. Seeing her coming out of the darkness like a ghost ship still gets me every time. To see the sad ruin of the great ship sitting here, where she landed at 2:30 in the morning of April 15th, 1912, after her long fall from the world above. You are so full of it, boss. The necklace, incidentally, is called the Heart of the Ocean. And the shameless treasure hunters get a shock when a mystery woman calls up and asks about it. It turns out this is the Rose I mentioned earlier. They bring her aboard their ship so she can tell them everything she knows about the sinking to help them find the necklace. Thus, her narration becomes the framing device. Okay, as the bow goes down, the stern rises up out of the water, slowly at first, and then faster and faster, until she's got a whole ass sticking out of the water, and that's a big ass. And not the only one in this scene. And that's how the Titanic sank. Pretty cool, huh? Not to someone who was on the ship, you insensitive jerk. And incidentally, why are you telling her all this? She knows perfectly well how it sank. Better than you. She was there. And after she's finished her story, and treasure hunters have given up hope of finding the heart of the ocean, it turns out that Rose had it all along, having escaped the Titanic with it in her pocket. She then secretly tosses it into the ocean as a symbolic gesture. Well, frankly, I found that scene a waste of money. I mean, the throwing away of the necklace, not the actual making of the scene. Rose didn't want it because it was a gift from her forced fiancé, who was already a wife-beater even though they were only engaged. She never sold it because apparently she didn't want to owe him anything, or maybe she just didn't want him to know that she was alive. Okay, fine, but why did you have to throw it in the ocean? There's a whole ship full of people right there that would have been happy to take it off your hands. I mean, yes, they are amoral treasure hunters, but they've been counting on finding this stone for a long time. For all we know, some of them might have their children's college fund counting on that diamond. And if you didn't want to profit from the stone yourself, you could have given it to some charity. That's a fortune that could have gone to researching diseases, helping third world countries, or developing eco-friendly technology right down the drain. And really, the whole treasure hunting framing device, it could have been, it's just so unnecessary, as I said before. The characters are so shallow and meaningless. Really, this whole film would have been a lot neater if we had just opened with the scene on the Titanic on the docks and closed with Rose on the Carpathia finding the stone in her pocket. My second and most powerful complaint is the supposedly epic love story between Rose and Jack. It is not an epic love story. It is a generic, trite, romantic wannabe that pretty much amounts to this.
You're rich and I'm not, but let's be together. Society won't like it. Let's not care.
And we've all seen that before. And I, for one, have noticed it's always the woman who is the rich one in that situation, so it's not even original in that respect. And don't you think it's a little odd that she decides to run away with a guy she's known for only a couple of days? I mean, granted that her fiancé, Cal Hockley, is a controlling, abusive, heartless snob, and compared to him anyone would be preferable. But still, 2 days? As I stated in my previous video, I am not against romance. I just hate the way Hollywood cheapens it, and to me, that's just what Titanic is. A cheap romance story. And yet, everyone seems to have fallen for this idea that it is one of the great romantic epics. But I say that the only reason this story has become noteworthy is because it was set on the Titanic. Humour me with a little exercise here. Imagine the so-called epic romance story from Titanic. Now, picture that exact same story happening on any other ship, or indeed a ship that was just made up. See, it's completely generic. I mean, the acting isn't even that good. My third complaint is that the story between Rose and Jack strikes me as being incredibly contrived. Coincidentally, their story takes them to each and every room on the Titanic that was made famous by that Irish preacher's photographs. The grand staircase, the dining room, the promenade, the gymnasium, steerage, even the boiler room. Similarly, between the two of them, Jack and Rose just happened to bump into all the most iconic people aboard the Titanic. She is the largest moving object ever made by the hand of man, and our master shipbuilder Mr. Andrews designed her from the keel plates up. Why, you shine up just like a new penny.
There's J.J. Astor, the richest man on the ship. He is here with his new wife, who's younger than I am. And there's Benjamin Guggenheim with one of his many mistresses. Mrs. Guggenheim is at home with the children. Blimey, if that's what it takes for us to get warm, I'd rather not, if you don't mind.
Yes, even the men in the crow's nest who spotted the iceberg, which suggests to me that if not for Jack and Rose, they might have sighted it a little sooner. And that brings me to perhaps the most contrived part. These two star-crossed lovers managed to witness firsthand the entire sinking of the Titanic from start to finish. They were almost on the bow when the iceberg actually hit. Get back! And they are literally the last two on the stern when she finally does sink. The ship is going to suck us down! Take a deep breath when I say. Kick for the surface and keep kicking. Do not let go of my hand. Glub, 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 glub. And incidentally, that bit where the stern rises up vertically and then sinks straight down, That was exaggerated for the film. And incidentally, how does Jack know how to deal with this situation? I mean, has he been in a shipwreck before? My fourth and final complaint is that they felt the need to add this fictional and not very good love story into the film to begin with. Excuse me, there were over 2,200 people on the Titanic. Weren't there enough stories of human drama for you to use already? In fact, a lot of those stories had to be cut or glazed over to make room for this schlock. Stories that were far more meaningful, touching, and even inspirational than this made-up one. For example, J.J. Astor calmly stayed on the ship while his wife escaped in a lifeboat. But he's only mentioned once in that ballroom scene. Isadora Strauss didn't even get into the boat. She stayed on the Titanic because she refused to abandon her husband. And yet she isn't mentioned by name at all. And completely cut was the story of the unknown sailor who gave his precious life belts to a family of complete strangers. The wireless operator who valiantly kept trying to reach help, even as the ship went down. The stokers who kept the power running so he could transmit. Now, some of you out there may say that there was a lot of material to cover and a relatively small amount of time in the movie. But this one was 3 hours long! 3 hours, and the best you could manage was a little bit of name dropping? I would think that a movie entitled Titanic would be about the tragic stories that occurred on that fateful night. But instead, the ship is pretty much just a backdrop to this generic romance. Ironically, a lot of those things were actually filmed, but they were made into deleted scenes. There would be more time for Leonardo DiCaprio making out with, I don't know, whoever it was. But my show is drawing to a close now, and to round things off, and to show I'm not one of those shock jocks who just complains about everything, let me tell you what I think is good about this film. Out of curiosity, I've seen several Titanic films, and the 1997 one clearly stands out when it comes to the set and capturing the drama of the sinking. You feel a chilling thrill right from the moment the iceberg is sighted to the instant the stern disappears beneath the waves. And incidentally, this was the first film to actually show the Titanic breaking in half. Well, except for that slapdash TV one. I honestly don't know if that's because it was simply too difficult in the earlier years to film that, or maybe because it was unknown until after the discovery of the actual wreck that they knew it had happened. And also, you definitely get a sense that they went the extra mile to recreate the Titanic in historical detail. But for me, those 2 points are as far as it goes. So, if you want to see a third-class love story with a first-class setting, then Titanic definitely delivers. But if you want to know the actual story of the Titanic, I recommend you go see one of the documentaries. Still, at least there's no chance of a sequel. Well, viewers, I wish you bon voyage, until we sail again on Opinions from the Armchair.